more active. Back when this was still a military base, they'd actually be doing such attached to guard the fort. So they'd be stopping everyone who was coming up to visit the fort, and they'd find out who they were and what they were doing here. And they seemed like a nice person with a good reason. They'd bring them in back here to this room, and they'd have to talk to the sergeant of the guards. And he'd find out who they were and what business they had in the fort. There may be merchants up here doing business with some of the men in barracks, things like that. He'd also be searching them, making sure they weren't bringing in any papers with pens and pencils that they could use to take diagrams of the fort's defenses to sell off to the French and American spies. Of course, none of you seem to be spies today, are you? I hope not. Right. Well, so what we do today is the sentries, they stand out there by the front gate for 1 hour, but then they get a 2-hour break back here in the guard room where it's nice and cool and they can talk to people and move around a bit. However, historically they'd actually be doing double that, so they'd be standing either by the front gate or by one of our 2 powder magazines for 2 hours, and then get a 4-hour break back here. And they actually would have had to rotate through like that for a full 24-hour shift from 10 a.m. until 10 a.m. the next day. So you can imagine it's not the most desirable position to have in the fort, especially if it's middle of winter with a blizzard blowing around and things like that. It's not the most fun. So sentry duty was often for the new recruits who hadn't learned very much yet and weren't really very useful for doing anything else around the fort yet either. Not that we do that today anymore, of course not. You may also notice over here we have the corporal of the guard, so these would be the people in charge of the sentries. So a guard detachment had a full detachment of 13 men, so there'd be 9 sentries. They have privates like me and some of the men inside there, and they'd be rotating through the 3 different sentry posts. And there'd be 3 of them on duty at a time with the other 6 sitting back here relaxing. And there's 2 corporals of the guard, like Corporal Archibald here. They'd be the ones in charge of the sentries, making sure they were where they're supposed to be and not passing out or anything like that. And then there would be 1 sergeant in charge of the corporals and everyone else, keeping track of everyone coming in and out of the fort with a nice guest book to record all those records. And finally 1 drummer to play a few calls at different times of the day to let people know what time it was. Pocket watches were quite expensive at the time, and a private like me would be making a shilling and a penny for a day's work, so it would take quite a while to save up that much money. I also noticed that the sentries are dressed quite a bit differently than I am at the moment. However, we are still part of the same regiment. We're both members of the 78th Highlanders. So what I'm wearing is called drill order uniform, so this is sort of the casual wear, jeans and t-shirt of the Victorian Army. It's a bit lighter uniform, it's a bit more comfortable. I don't have all the fancy trim and big buttons to worry about, so this is for things like training. It's like the squad you'll see marching around, they'll be marching around a bit. So they're actually some of our newest recruits, so they're just learning some of the things. If you're interested in seeing some people getting yelled at quite a bit, you can find them. So this uniform sort of just for training purposes, doing general work around the fort. To get this one a bit dirty or ripped up, it's still fairly cheap and easy to replace. Whereas the sentries are wearing their dress uniform, that red doublet, much fancier than what I've got. Got that bright red dye, puffed up with fancy cuffs and collars, those large brass buttons which need to be shone and polished each and every morning. The whole process to get dressed up like that takes just about an hour. So that's actually what they'd wear for special things, things like standing sentry, going on parades, or marching into battle. They'd also be wearing that. Sentries do have all their rifle gear with them as well. That little pouch on the front that holds about 10 rounds of ammunition, as well as one on the back that holds about 30 more. Of course, the bayonet in the back as well, in case someone gets a little too close. These rifles do tilt. They'll take a little bit of time to reload, not as much as the muskets, but still about 5 or 6 seconds. If someone's a little bit fast, you can pull out that bayonet, and suddenly your rifle is also a spear. It's quite useful. So, are there any other questions about